give me one shot here on a blue chip stock, believe me, Kevin, the only problem you're gonna have is that you didn't buy more.
Nobody knows if the stock is going to go up, down, sideways, or in circles.
What is good, NBA draft fans? Your boys are back, the Wolves of Ball Street. It is the Draftdaq NBA Draft Podcast. My name is Corey Tulaba, and I am not here, as always, with my co-host Albert Gim today. Albert is planning on joining us in a little bit. We have a fill-in. The way we treat this podcast, it's like a Tom Thibodeau injury. It's next man up. We got my homie, fellow No Ceilings member, Tyler Rucker, Backcourt V. Thank you for stepping up and filling in as Albert does his duties.
No, I mean, it's like getting Michael Jordan off the bench. So, of course, Albert had to be a slacker. I'm pumped to be back on the Draftdaq. It's been a minute. It's been a while.
It's been a minute, and it's actually quite fitting for where I'm going to start the podcast today. We're going to talk about Jalen Duren in a little bit, but we got some monster breaking news today that Shaedon Sharpe is he potentially eligible for the 22 draft, or he just is straight up eligible, and we'll find out if he's going to be in.
Yeah, it seems like it was just something that kind of shook the world of, draft fans, like evaluators like you and myself. It was kind of like, okay, excuse me, Gavoni dropping a Gavoni bomb in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a wait and see approach. He enrolled at Kentucky in January. They said he's been practicing with the team. Gavoni even said later, we'll see in the next couple of games if, Calipari unleashes him, because a lot of talent. This is one of the top recruits in the nation, and could be another curveball in this draft class. We could get another, force in the middle of the mix.
It would be a force. Sharpe, I believe, is the number one ranked prospect for the 2023 class. And the last time you were here, I believe, was when I made you watch a bunch of Ball is Life highlights.
Yes.
And base your top 10 rankings off of the Slam Ball is Life mixtapes. So it's fitting because we're so deep in the 2022 class that I straight up, my evaluation of Sharpe right now is only from the Slam mixtape that I watched 10 minutes before we started recording tonight. And let me just tell you, I'm all the way in.
All the way in already. I love this. Me and you, two of the most patient guys in the draft universe, and you're all the way in. I love this.
All the way. I'm throwing all the chips on the table. I'm putting it on. When you're watching Cade, like, you could just watch him move on the court, and you're like, that dude, he's got it.
Yes.
Like, Sharpe's got it. Like, there's not much that, you could get from these highlight mixes, but you can see if a dude moves like a basketball player. Like, that is evident. And he's very fluid. I did watch a little bit of his footage from a game, thanks to our friends at Instat. So I'm intrigued. I'm all in. And if he's in this class, I'm telling, there are going to be some opinions flying. I'm ready for the let's take him number one. I'm ready for the, are we sure he's good? Is he a lottery pick? Is he overrated? I'm ready for all of them. I can't wait for it. But it's big news because it could be another like blue chip type prospect in a draft where I think we're all starting to wonder after we get to what, like, I mean, there's just a ton of uncertainty after 4. So very exciting stuff and breaking news in the draft world. I also, last night, I met up with our friend Nathan from the Draft Deeper podcast to watch Rutgers take on Iowa. I didn't hit any traffic, so I actually got to watch warm-ups and got to see the full game, so that was nice. I really needed to get a close eye on Keegan Murray. Now, I want to say, I know that you're in. You talked about it on the Backcourt Violation podcast. I believe you mentioned it on the No Ceilings podcast. You're in on Keegan Murray. I want to hear your thoughts, or I want you to give our listeners your thoughts, because we covered Keegan a few weeks ago, and I want a new perspective on him.
Yeah, so this was a guy in the beginning of the year that I just felt like no one really had a good, feeling for him. It seemed like everyone was nervous to jump into the deep end. And one night I just said, like, screw this. This guy's pissing me off. I'm going to check it out. So I dove into his film and just sort of hit me like a ton of bricks. And I really, really like the type of player he is. I think he's just one of these quiet demeanor, carries himself maturely. I really think does a lot of stuff on the court that might not be sexy, might not be exciting to a lot of, fans or evaluators, but he's just an intelligent player. I mean, really jumped at me with his awareness off the ball. Kind of knows where to space himself, knows where to find little holes in the defense. And I'm just intrigued. This looks like a guy that's going to play a long time at the next level. And I think this is the type of player that helps you get out of the lottery. He's trending towards being an early lottery selection. This is the type of guy you need to add to the team to, take that next step to getting towards the playoffs. So every time I watch Keegan Murray, I just find something new that I love about him. And I know that you and Nathan went to that game against Rutgers, and, he struggled a little bit. Rutgers threw the kitchen sink at him, but I just really like some of the plays he made on the floor. He just really intrigues me. I think this is going to be a guy NBA teams just fall in love with when they get him in for interviews and the pre-draft workouts. Like, this just seems like a guy that could creep up.
Yeah, he really impressed me last night too. And when you go to a game where a player, I don't think he struggled. I think that Rutgers had an awesome game plan. I think Iowa kind of was really late to alter and change their game plan. Like, they were just trying to work him in the post. And until like the last 5 minutes or so, it felt like they just were being stubborn about it. And they were just slowing it down, grinding it out. The Jersey Mike's Arena that Rutgers plays at is one of the toughest places to play. Like, at least in the Big Ten, I think in the country, like, they are awesome there. I've yet to see them lose there. Ron Harper Jr. is like a big body dude who can, actually handle him physically. But from the minute I walked in, I saw this dude locked in, prepared, like, from stretches through warm-ups. Like, he just had a look in his eye, like, I'm getting ready for this game. This is a big game. Like, I'm getting ready for it. From the tip, like, offensively, defensively, he was just engaged and focused. Like, you could see the look in his eye. And I'm 5 feet away from him, so you just see this. You just see it in him. He's got something. He's. I feel like he's bigger than he looks on screen. He looks pretty big on screen, but he's a.
That's
legit
what I wanted
NBA.
to ask you, because
he's got legit NBA size.
Because that's what I wanted to ask you. Because
he's
as
thick,
you know, Corey, it's totally different. I didn't mean to cut you off, but it's totally different seeing guys in person.
No.
And, when they're listed 6'8", and you see them in person, you're like, that's a big 6'8", So did he just jump at you right away with his size?
Yeah. He's leaner than I think he looks with his jersey on.
Okay.
He warms up the entire time without his jersey on. Like, he's very lean, but he's like, at the same time, he's got a thickness to him that you could tell he's going to really, like, as his body matures, like, he's got, pretty decent shoulders. His legs are a little bit thicker than, like, his brother's legs are. Like, you could tell he's putting in the time in the weight room, and you could see where it's going. And I was lukewarm on him at the beginning, because I'm like, he's putting up these godly numbers. And if he's putting up those godly numbers and he's not the number one pick, then there's got to be some reason that he's not, right? Like, because his advanced numbers were crazy, his counting stats were crazy. And I was like, he's going to be a 21-year-old sophomore, which for me is not a big deal. I was ridiculously high on Davion Mitchell last year, who, was same age. But he's built for the modern NBA. I think that anybody who drafts him and is expecting him to be like a superstar number one option, I think that's a stretch. But
Right.
like in this league where it's like, hey, are you 6'8", 6'9" with a long wingspan and you can dribble, pass, and shoot? Okay, you could play anywhere. You'll play in
Right.
any lineup. He can guard multiple spots. He switched seamlessly, head on a swivel. Like he can protect the rim, play up. He can guard out on the perimeter. I just love. I was into it. Like the shot looked buttery smooth. Like absolutely no doubt in my mind he's going to be enough of a shooter to, at the very least, like attack closeouts. And I loved him in transition. Even though he didn't have the best like scoring output he had all year, I was really impressed because in a sloppy, ugly game like that, can you find ways to contribute? And like 13 boards, couple of blocks, like I'm in on Keegan Murray. I think, like you said, he is not going to be a late lottery pick. He's trending up to that top part. You know, I think top 7 or 8 is almost like a lock for him because there's just no guarantees, you know, after what, 3?
Right.
And maybe not even there. So
I just feel like I feel like he's a guy, and I said this on the backcourt pod, and I know like people are gonna think I'm crazy, but I'm not saying he's this guy, but he carries himself like Tim Duncan, where he's just quiet, but you can tell the seriousness, like the just locked in. And he's almost like boring when you watch him on tape because he's just such a technician where he's just lulling you to sleep. Mm-hmm. He does a lot of the little stuff that really stands out. I'm like you. I'm all in on him. And I'm not saying that with like he needs to be a top 4 pick. I'm saying if you got him at that 7 or 8 spot and you're one of those teams, you'd be pumped up to get a Keegan Murray around 8. Like I just really think this is a guy you need. And I'm right there with you. You can't be drafting him thinking he's going to be this number 1, you know, option that's going to carry your team. But if he's going to be a complementary piece with some, you know, weapons you have around him, it's going to be a really, really fun piece to have.
I think I lost you a little bit.
Oh gosh. Is it me?
All right, you're back. We'll get this in post. The YouTube crowd is going to get the technical difficulties.
Shout out the live crowd.
So let's pivot from there. I think we're both sold on Keegan Murray going forward. At least we got another guy that we can feel comfortable with. Today's episode is all about the big man from Memphis, Jalen Duren, center from Memphis, reclassified to be in the 2022 draft. He is a young 18 years old, like one of the youngest prospects in the draft. Like he and teammate Amani Bates both reclassified. Amani is like, I think his birthday's in January and Jalen's birthday's in November. So like he just made the cut to even be able to be eligible for this class. He's going to be like 18 and a half years old on draft night. So, you know, when we talk about these measurements, you have to put in perspective that this is a kid who is still supposed to be finishing out his senior year in high school, right? He's 6'11", 250, 7'5" and a half wingspan. Memphis had a pro day earlier in the year. So those were his measurements out of that pro day. His counting stats is at 10.6 points per game, 7.2 rebounds per game, 1.1 assists, 2.1 turnovers, 2.6 blocks, 0.8 steals. Field goal percentage, 63.3%. Has not hit a 3. He's shooting 57% from the free throw line. True shooting percentage is 63. PER 22.6. So pretty good numbers. And obviously the size, the frame, which we'll get into, is huge for a kid who is so young. His stock price in preseason, ESPN had him at number 4 on their board. SB Nation had him at 8. Tankathon had him at 4. Basketball News had him at 4. Bleacher Report had him at 5 for an average price of 5. He was the 4th ranked prospect on the preseason Draftdaq IPO. He pretty much hovered around those areas in the December update. In January, as of today, I updated a lot of the rankings. He's starting to slip a little bit. The numbers are starting to slip a little. ESPN still has him at 5. SB Nation still has him at 6. Tankathon has him at 10. Basketball News has him at 6. Bleacher Report has him at 11, no ceilings. We had him at 9 on our last board for an average price of 7.83. So we went from an average price of 5 to an average price of 7.83. With that said, on the January draft update that we just dropped, he was still the 5th ranked prospect on the board overall. So while, some outlets are putting him towards that 9, 10, 11 area, ESPN still has him as top 5 pick, right? So he still has some believers. It's not like he's one of these guys who had this massive fall from grace like Peyton Watson, Caleb Houston. He's still hanging around, even though he hasn't been, I think, everything we wanted, right? We've wanted a little bit more. But I'll ask you, based on that, average price 7.8, is Jalen Duren's stock price too high, too low, or is it just right?
I'm going to probably surprise you because I was excited when you asked me to come on this because we've had different opinions about Duren in the beginning of the year. I was a lot colder than you were about him. And we usually see eye to eye. So that always bugs me because I'm like, what am I missing? But
right. Same.
I think it's a little low. And that's coming from a guy that is lower on him than I think a lot of people are because draft time is going to come and this guy's going to heat up. And just because I'm, I have him right outside my top 10, he's moving back up. But just because I have him low, I still think he could be a top 5 pick because NBA front offices always drool over big guys, especially super young ones with his measurables. Those are freakish measurables. He's still figuring out everything. There's so much tools to work with. And teams always drool over potential franchise setting big. So
always,
it always happens. Go back and look at previous drafts. It always happens.
I was going to save that for later, but I literally, in my notes, I wrote, he's like the epitome of the NBA's existential crisis of does it make sense to draft this traditional center this high in the lottery? That is the NBA front office existential crisis. Here's this guy staring at me who looks like everything you could ever possibly want. Is this the direction of the modern NBA? What are we doing here? Should we just wait till later in the draft to draft one of these other big men? He's the guy that makes you almost overthink your philosophy on basketball. He's that special of a physical specimen.
Because every single team is going to be like, hey, we can get one of these bigs later in the draft, like you're saying. But then they're going to get Jalen Duren in front of themselves in an empty gym, and they're going to be like, oh, my gosh, what is this? So it's just one of those things. People are going to be sweating in war rooms. And like I said, just because I have him lower on my board doesn't mean I'm not expecting him to be a very early selection because – like you're saying, this kid would be getting drafted out of high school if that was allowed. And the tools are freakish. We're going to have to weigh in the situation with what he's playing in at Memphis. But he's starting to show more flashes. Obviously, like you said, we want to see a little bit more. But, when he's rolling and he's got that, energy flowing and he's a little nasty, he is really fun. But, as I've had questions, I'm slowly starting to warm up. I'm starting to finally see what Corey's seeing. I hate to tell him that he's right.
We're gonna, we're gonna talk it out. For me personally, I think that his stock, it's just right. I started moving my board around a little bit, and I have him right now at 8.
Okay.
So his average stock price 7.8. That is right in line with where I'm at personally. Could he turn it up a little bit? Could he, absolutely. And I could I could bump him back up to where I started him. But as of right now, I think that's a safe area, because when I look at these numbers, it's I almost feel it's plus minus 3 spots both ways. I could see him being the 5th spot, the 5th guy taken, the 4th guy taken. I could also see him falling to the 11, 12 spot where, so I think this is the right spot for him. Let's talk out the specifics. Let's get into like the scouting report. Let's talk about the skills, maybe the lack thereof. You're our guest. I'm going to give you the opportunity to choose what part of his game you want to talk about first.
Okay, I got to talk about this because it's bugging me. I feel like we talked in the group chat for No Ceilings earlier this week, and you had some good points, and this is perfect to talk about it. I'm always nervous with athletic bigs that are just stronger, jump out of the gym. I'm just always nervous about it because I've talked with Tyler Metcalf on the No Ceilings pod. Like, I'm always cautious because why can't you get that later in the draft? You can always find them potentially in free agency too, like serviceable bigs. His feet fascinate me because they seem heavy. He also shows some flashes where he's really quick, and it's almost like I think he's trying to process, like his body's trying to process what his mind wants to do. And he shows flashes of it being quicker with repetition. So at first, when I first watched him early in the year, I was like, okay, he's got really heavy feet. And then I kept watching more and I was like, maybe I'm wrong. And he's just a powerful monster. Cause I mean, he gets any offensive rebound and goes back up. There's not a lot of people that are stopping him. So
no,
are you thinking his feet are a lot quicker than I'm seeing first? Do I just need to basically lock myself in a room and just watch him like slide all over the place left and right? Or what are you vibing on?
I think it's like one of those situations where like you would get into like a political argument with somebody and you're giving them information from your news source and they're giving you information from their news source. And like, you could find examples of where you're both right and both wrong because he both has heavy feet and light feet. You know, I wrote about him on the No Ceiling Substack, and because it seemed like the internet community at large, because for as much as I just said the mainstream outlets are still kind of having that belief in him, and you also have to take into account a lot of these outlets have been following him since he was a high school kid and not just buying in now. They're seeing maybe some other parts of his game, but a lot of the internet draft community was kind of out. So I wanted to write about him to kind of be like, I'm still in. We shouldn't give up, even if there are concerns, and this is why. And let's show the talent. And you could see plenty of examples of him being really light on his feet. And he got switched out onto JD Davison at one point in the Alabama game, and he's hip to hip with him. Switching his stance out on the perimeter, made him kick the ball out, non-penetrating pass back to the top of the perimeter. Like, JD Davison's an explosive guard. It's not like he's staying in front of, some low-level school in, from that you can make up. It sounds like it would be like a team that they would play on Friday Night Lights. Like, JD Davison's a guy who could potentially be a top 20 pick. So you have examples like that, and then you have examples where he's a little bit slow-footed. Maybe he's like not getting up the court as fast as you want him to, and it almost seems like he's running on his heels a little bit. Like he's using his whole foot. So I see it both ways, but I've seen enough flashes in the right direction to be like, I think you can work with this. Like, this is not going to be like, his feet are not going to be detrimental. I think with his length, 7'5" and a half wingspan, crazy. And he can get into a stance, and we'll talk about some of the other bigs later. But Walker Kessler's got tight hips, and he does a good job doing what he can. But like, I don't know if he's going to be able to stick NBA guards on an island with all that space. I think Duren can do that. So I think he moves his feet well enough, and I think offensively, like he's shown enough to be light on his feet for me personally.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is completely right. The more I watched him, the more flashes I keep seeing, and that's what you want with a raw big that's still developing. Is like the more you watch, the more you get enticed, and it's one of those like I watch his film and I like kind of go, okay, I'm buying in a little bit more. And then you find yourself like the next day being like, I need to go watch him again. Like you see what every evaluator or NBA team is going to be drooling over. You see why there was so much buzz around him going into the year. So I know it sounds crazy with what you said, but I think you make a lot of sense. Like there's times where he's heavy. There's times where he's really light. There's even some games where I was like, is he wearing the wrong, like his shoes too big? Because he's just running so weird in them. But and you also see him like get switched out on the perimeter, and he holds his own against quicker guards. He covers ground in a hurry. I also think he's got some weak side rejections where he gets places quickly when he wants to.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely intrigued. I'm definitely buying in more now that I've taken a deeper dive. And it's just one of those guys that I think the more game tape we get, the deeper the season goes on, we're going to keep seeing more and more flashes. And I don't know. You got me now on the Jalen Duren train because I keep looking at my board and I'm like, I could probably move him up. Like I used to be comfortable having him lower. Now I'm like, I feel weird. I have like a cold sweat down my back.
Yeah. So with the rim protection, we know
Right.
probably his A+, this is going to translate skill, right? Like he's going to block shots.
Yes.
We talked about the feet. Like, is he going to be able to guard in the perimeter a little bit? Do you think that he's like scheme versatile? Because I think if you're drafting him in the top 7, top 5, maybe the top 10, I don't know. Though again, this draft, like, why not swing for the fence if with some of these other prospects? I think if you're a front office, the mindset should be like, all right, we're in the second round of the playoffs. Jalen Duren's our starting center. He's a big part of our rotation. He's a starting center. He's playing 33 minutes a game in the regular season. In round 2, it's game 6. And, Memphis is going small. Is Jalen Duren on the court in the fourth quarter?
I mean, I think that is the question that's going to swing his entire stock. I think you have to, because it's like, I'm also bringing in the shooting touch. I know we're going to probably talk about that in a sec, but you have to figure out, is this a guy that's going to turn into a more versatile two-way player, or is this a shot blocking blob threat that doesn't offer much more, but that's what he does at an NBA skill level? Because he has times around the basket where I'm like, the power is freakish. Like, and it's just like, no one can stop him. It's like when he gets a gather and goes right up, it's just like, get out of the way. Like he's going through people. I want to say yes, just because I've seen enough from, like, we always have to remind ourselves how young he is. And you've seen enough times, like you're saying, when he went out against JD Davison, you've seen him switched on the perimeter and he's sliding his feet. He's showing he can hang.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's there, and I think it's only going to get quicker. I think he's shown some signs this year of the processing is on its way when it comes to like reading the floor, analyzing the defenses. So I definitely think that could be a yes to that answer.
Mm-hmm.
But that's going to be, chasing potential, and that's where it gets dangerous for GMs. But I really do think the more I keep watching him, the more I found myself wanting to buy in.
Yeah.
What about you, Corey? I'm throwing it right back at you.
I'm in. I think, again, like, I think a lot of it may have to do with the offense and how it develops, which we'll touch on in a little bit. But I think defensively, like, I've seen him blitz a pick and roll at the top of the perimeter and recover down to his man and block a shot. And cover the ground when the ball's swinging. Now, obviously, at an NBA level, he's like, in this scenario now, maybe he doesn't get there, but he's 18, he's learning, and he did it at the college level. It's on the film. He did that. And I think with his size, like, I know that so often, we want to talk about process. Like, is his processing great? Is the process the right process? Or when you're a physical freak like that, sometimes you can get the result without the process. And he does have that. So I'm buying in, and that's why I've kind of never wavered and really had him falling to the top 10, even though I have him at 8, which I've dropped him down the board a little bit. It's not like set in stone. My board has been more fluid this year than any other year, but I think he's a good rebounder. And I think he's doing some things on a team that is not my favorite to watch, but the strength is there. He's not going to get bullied. Like, I think he's a guy. Centers are not dead,
Right.
Embiid just had one of the, and Jokic, they both had like the best center nights ever
Of all time.
like on the same night. But like, I'd rather go to war with Jalen Duren in year 4 against those guys than, Nick Vucevic. I don't know, like whoever my small ball center, like who's a small ball 5 that you're just
Oh,
like, all right,
gosh.
you can't do that with those guys. So,
Right.
I get it. And I think that like a lot of people are probably going to have like the Rudy Gobert conversation in their head, which is not totally fair. But I think, and I don't know if he gets there, we'll see. But I feel like a lot of this stuff is very like he's going to get compared to Bam.
Yeah.
I'm not comparing him to Bam, but in this instance, I want to say I want people to go like check out the Draft Express website and like the scouting reports written about Bam. There's it's not like Bam was this surefire guy. Like, people didn't think he processed the game. Now
Right.
you think of Bam and you're like, this is a guy who is one of the best at processing the game. And he was just an athletic finisher, rim protector kind of guy at Kentucky. Now, we know that Kentucky guys don't always get to show the bag, right? But I think that maybe he's in a similar situation on this shitty Memphis roster as well. So what you see here, especially from such a young kid, like, you can't look at him now and be like, well, he doesn't process every single pick and roll coverage the right way every single time. He's never going to. He just turned 18. All it takes is a little bit of good coaching and it clicks, and then it's a wrap.
Right. And I think you're spot on about the Bam comparison, because I think that's been an unfair one.
Yes.
Because they're not as similar as people think. And
No.
you're spot on. Like, I feel like every draft class, after someone shows some signs as a rookie, people love to go back and be like, well, how did he last so long in the draft? And it's like, there's a reason he lasted. Like, Bam wasn't this finished product at Kentucky. He still had a lot of holes in his game, but the coaching, the development, a team stress patience
Miami,
with them at the next level. Yes. Miami,
right
shout
spot.
out. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying with Duren. Like, I think there's definitely, his stats won't show you the growth, but there's definitely, if you watch him from the beginning of the year to like that recent Alabama game where all of a sudden the motor was just on fire and you're like, okay, this is the guy we want to see. Like, this is a completely more like exciting player, because he was just passionate. He's making plays and screaming. Like, that's where you're seeing the engagement pick up. So I think he's growing throughout the year, and that just goes to show you how young he is. Like, we have to keep bringing that up. And I love the draft guys that are older. Like, I'm like you, like older guys, if they can play, they can play. So, it's just with him, you want to keep seeing the flashes grow over the year. And I think he's on the right path. It might be slower and it's not what we were hoping to get, but I really do think that everything's starting to come together. And, like you said, that team is a little tough to watch at times. So
They are. And I saw them live.
Right.
They
I didn't want to bring it up.
I saw them live. I was really excited. Like, it's funny because it was a doubleheader. First game was Xavier versus Iowa State. And, I was like, all right, Paul Scruggs. I know Simon Hawks Draft Nerd is like really big on Tyrese Hunter. It was my first real game watching him. And that game, I had so much fun. I'm like, Tyrese Hunter is amazing. He's my favorite player of all time. I'm all in. Let's go. Like, this kid, he's got the look. Like, I'm ready to buy in. And I was like, what a great opening band to see the headliner. You know, like I'm so excited about that. And then the games and the warm-ups, I'm up, I'm taking video and pictures. I'm like, this dude literally looks like he could eat me alive, like like Mike Tyson, I'll eat your children type, like
Yeah.
physical monster, dunks like dunking like a wing, just. And then he underwhelmed me in the game, and yet I walked away from it going, "No, I'm not worried at all." Like,
Right.
like I'm not worried about it at all, even though I didn't have fun watching him live. So even when you see underwhelming games live, there are, like, you can't look at the totality and the result of that specific game when you're evaluating talent. You have to look at like some of the other stuff. He had a monster block that completely changed the momentum of the game for Memphis. Like, just absolutely game flip like that. So defensively, I think he has that kind of defensive momentum swinging stuff to his game. I think he'll guard enough on the perimeter, and I think he's got the strength to bang with some of these new, big, huge, more traditional, but like neo-traditional centers. Before we get into the offense, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages,
Oh no, he's here.
my co-host is back. We are making this a triple threat match, and there's going to be a lot of wrestling talk in this podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, Albert, garbage time, Gim.
Hell in a Cell, baby.
This feels
Last
like
man standing.
this feels like New York talk show radio. Like I'm just calling in. Like I'm Sal from Staten Island, just calling in, just have some questions about the Jets' offensive line.
Hey, Mike. Hey, Mike. What do you think about we trade that kid that we drafted this year? Let's get Tom Brady in here. What do you think of that? Brady goes to big market. He sticks it to Belichick. I think we give him a 6th-round pick and Vinny Testaverde jersey, and we get him in gangrene.
That's exactly what it feels like right now. But oh my God, I told my wife, I was like, hey, I'm jumping into the pod like halfway through, and she's like, they're cheating on you?
Yeah. Betrayal is real. Nice for you to show up.
I know, man. I had to fight through LA traffic to make it here, but it's good to be on, boys. How you guys doing?
Better now.
Doing well. We're about to hop into a little bit more offense from Duren. We covered the D.
Pause.
Cover that D.
Pause. And we're ready to go. We're ready to get into the offense. We're already off the rails here. We went into a New York talk show segment, and we're making pause jokes. Things are falling apart.
Or you could say they're heating up, falling apart, or heating
away.
up.
Things are.
I'm glad I got the memo on hats too. So
sometimes it just takes time.
You still have a sticker on your hat, by the way. Moving on.
It's a New York thing. All right, let's talk about the shooting. He's hit 0 threes. He's shooting 57% from the free throw line. Yeah. Where are we at on the shooting, boys? Albert, you just got here. Let's give us some words.
Okay, so I have no idea what you guys have talked about until now, which is fun.
Talked about the D.
Right. You covered the D, right? Yep. Inhaled the D. I think the biggest thing exactly.
Okay.
I imagine.
Scott, calm down.
I imagine you guys talked about how raw he is. And I'm sure you guys are talking about how young he is and what he's going to be. I probably shouldn't have used raw, but anyway, I think you can apply that to the shooting. He is clearly so okay. Man, I'll save this one. Because I have like a bigger picture question for you guys about Duren. But in terms of the shooting, there have been some moments. Yes, a couple mid-rangers that look pretty nice. I don't remember who it was against, but hit like a turnaround fadeaway, and I was like, the hell did that come from? Pretty decent. I imagine that you guys will probably feel what I feel, in that I think we need to see more. The free throw shooting numbers are terrifying. But then when you watch him, the shooting doesn't look terrifying to me. Are my initial thoughts. I think he's very young, and there's a lot about his game and also about his body that seems kind of young to me. And what I mean by that is, like, you look at him and he's ripped out of his mind. I'm sure you guys have talked about that too. But there's like a clunkiness to him that I don't think is a lack of athleticism, but more like youth, and he needs to develop. Like he kind of like, do you guys remember when Miles Turner was in the whole draft process and everybody talked about Miles Turner's gait? And they're all worried about, like, is he going to run like a normal human being? Do you select a guy in the first round if he can't run like a normal human being? He turned out okay. Miles Turner runs okay now, and he has had a pretty good NBA career, and teams are trying to trade for him now. So I think with Duren, there's some rawness all over, and part of that is definitely in the shooting as well. Is kind of where I wanted to start.
He's raw, obviously, absolutely, but he's not the most raw prospect in the draft where it's a complete I'm complete betting on this. Like, I can, like, he's got a floor that I think is higher than people want to give him credit for. Like, if I think guys like him, and even one of the reasons I was high on Wiseman, it's like, all right, so the floor is probably DeAndre Jordan. That's a pretty high floor. Like, we don't know what the potential might end up being, but, like, all right, he's going to probably defend and catch lobs. Now, I think the NBA game's evolved since DeAndre Jordan came into the league, where there's more advanced coverages defensively. You have to cover more ground. The game's shrunk and whatnot. But yeah, there's some clunkiness. But for the shooting, I'm pretty okay with where he's at. He's shooting 34% on far twos, which is not terrible for a guy who's considered a non-shooter, and he shot 35 of them. So, I mean, it's not like he's DeMar DeRozan living in the mid-range, but he shot enough of them to be like, all right, this is a sample size I think we can measure from a college kid who apparently is a non-shooter. So I don't think he'll ever stretch it to the three-point line, and I don't think he needs to or should. But I think that he's going to be confident enough to, like, when he's setting a screen and teams are overplaying him as a dive man at the hoop, like, I think he'll be able to just stop and pop in the, little area between the half circle and the free throw line. And I think that's a shot that he could use as a counter to when teams just sag off and try to wait for him at the rim. So I think that the shooting is not necessarily like, on, a tool on his belt, but I think he's got it in the toolbox that he can go and, get from across the room from time to time. Rucker, where you at?
I'm not as scared as I was. I'm sort of coming around to what Corey's talking about, because once I dove into his film, you're really seeing there's some touch there. And I'm not just talking about the outside shot. Like Albert said, he has a couple flashes where he hit a couple turnarounds, but he also has some really nice, like, footwork and step throughs and touch around the basket. So I'm like, okay, that's developing. There's promise that the outside shot could also develop. Obviously, the free throws scary, but this is why I'm always nervous about drafting the guys that in high school, he didn't have to shoot the ball from outside. He dunked on everyone. He was overpowering high school opponents. So now all of a sudden he's having to work on that game and focus on it because he's so young. I'm still thinking like Corey, like, it's going to come. The free throw percentage, it always scares you with centers when they're lower than 60%. But I do think, like, that'll get worked on. I think when you're a one and done freshman like that doesn't have that much of an outside shot, like, he wasn't going to come in and shoot 85% from the line, or else we would have been drooling, so
shocking.
Yeah. And if you're saying, Corey, if his floor is DeAndre Jordan, we're going to be pretty pumped about Jalen Duren at the next level. I mean, that is an impactful presence, especially defensively. So I do think he's got more upside and talent than DeAndre Jordan. And we're talking about DeAndre Jordan has had a heck of a basketball career. So I was selling early. Now I'm buying. I'm really starting to get intrigued with Duren.
one of the things we haven't really seen much of is like, well, anything you want to see, because their point guards are so terrible at Memphis. They literally can't do anything for him. But like, we have not seen them like really go to him on the block,
Yeah.
right? We haven't
Yes.
seen the post bag. We haven't seen as much like pick and roll, like dive man stuff as I'd want to see. And with the pick and roll stuff, like I think that like if you pair him with Josh Giddey and SGA in Oklahoma City, right? Like Giddey's gonna find him on these lobs that he's never gotten so easily in his life. And he's finishing like everything around the rim. You know, he's gonna be one of these guys like Mitchell Robinson, who's just like sky high field goal percentage. I think in an NBA context, he'll be able, I think he might come out of the gate early offensively and show some stuff that he hasn't shown. You know, when he was at Montverde and when he in his playing AAU, like he had like a little turnaround fadeaway from the short porch. You know, like he had some stuff that he's just not going to do in college. And just because you do something in high school does not mean that that is going to translate to other levels. But it doesn't seem like he's really getting the opportunity to show it. And I think that if he goes to a team that is willing to develop him and give a little freedom, I think that he might show some things and be like, I didn't realize he had that in his bag. And I think that's why, while a lot of people who maybe this is the first time you're really getting a good look at Duren may have sour on him from where he was ranked preseason, I think a lot of those outlets that have been watching him for years have stayed consistent with him, probably because they've seen some stuff that he has in his bag that he hasn't got to show off yet.
No,
Corey.
I'm
Yes,
I'm
sorry.
gonna go ahead and interrupt you, Albert, because you were late. No, I'm agreeing. This is what I'm saying. Like we talked about this in the beginning of the show, just so it could catch up Albert. But I was like, people might move him down, but this is the guy that moves back up as the draft gets closer because NBA teams get in front of him, and all these old GMs, and I'm not trying to age shame anyone, but all these old school guys get a look at him in an empty gym, and they're just gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, this kid could be something so special. He could change our franchise." So. But I'm like you. I haven't seen him too much in pick and roll besides if they're trying to throw him a lob. And, I've seen one play where I think he got like a dump off in the dunker spot and had like a pump fake, step through, beautiful finish on the other side of the rim. And I was like, can we get more of this? Like, obviously, he's teasing us with the ability to do that. So go ahead, Albert, you jerk.
No. All this name calling on our show, you're the guest. But anyway, I just want to say, I think, Corey, what you're talking about is a really important discussion that people need to consistently have when talking about Duren, because I think the context here is really, really important. I think the reason why people might struggle with Duren is because so many of the things that people are looking for from him as a prospect right now is theoretical, but I think it's theoretical not because he can't show it or is choosing not to show it, but because of the context that he's in, right? You talked about the post touches. You talked about, there's so many different aspects of his game that he can't show because, as you mentioned, he doesn't have a point guard. The team's not great. There's a lot of different issues that he has, right? And what the things that he's being asked to do. But then if you start to dig a little deeper and you get into the nitty gritty, the things that you talked about with the shooting. Also, if we start, I'm sure you're going to probably segue into the playmaking. There are little moments there that you see with the playmaking, with the passing. You're like, where the hell did that come from? This is like some really kind of beautiful / advanced stuff that you wouldn't expect if you're looking at the flow of how things have been at Memphis and the context that he's in. So I'm 100% with you guys. I definitely have not been as high on him as Corey has been throughout. And I want to give Corey the credit here where you've been consistently high on Duren, even when everybody else at No Ceilings may have wavered or dropped him. You've consistently kept him right around the same range. And I think that's kind of, because of the context. And I think that's a discussion that needs to be held more when we're talking about Duren, and I hope other people are too, because it is a really interesting context that he's in. So I just kind of wanted to piggyback off of what you said and kind of back that up.
Well, so when you talk about like people at No Ceilings, and I think the internet draft community at large kind of like souring on him, and I'm staying consistent. I think like where I've been arguing for him has kind of like specifically been in our like mock draft discussion situations where like I get if you have him at 12, 13. I get it.
Yeah.
There are
Yeah.
plenty of reasons to not buy into a big man that maybe he puts on more mass and is a little bit lumbering and is too slow. Maybe the processing never catches up with the flashes that he's shown. Maybe the reason we're not seeing him get post touches is because he doesn't have that at a high enough level. The shooting obviously is a major work in progress. Maybe that never comes to fruition. Maybe he becomes a 47% free throw shooter. So all the stuff around the rim, he just becomes I get all of that potential downside. When I'm kind of arguing for him, like on our Zoom calls and our meetings and stuff, is like, that's all well and good. But there's going to be an executive at the top half of the lottery who looks a kid in his face that literally looks like Shaquille O'Neal in Blue Chips and goes back to the meeting room and goes, we're going to fucking pass on this guy.
Yeah, right. That's exactly what they're going to say.
Like he's gonna go into workouts and do like a Tony Hawk like 900 dunk at 7 feet 250, and teams are gonna be like, all right, let's fucking throw away the game film here, and because we could work with this, we'll mold this. Our player development staff can take care of this, right? And sometimes they'll be right. The Bam Adebayo situation, they'll be right there, right? Ultimately, like maybe Duren is not a first draft team guy. Maybe he's a second location guy. That's a possible scenario too. I could easily see that. But when I argue for him, it's not like, oh, I think you're an idiot because you don't have him as a top 5 pick. It's just like, well, I do think that the psychology of an NBA front office, maybe not the super smart intellectual ones, but all it takes is one. All it took was for San Antonio to take Josh Primo at 12. Maybe Primo would have gone 25th.
Yeah.
If San Antonio doesn't take him, and they should have traded back to get assets or whatever. But maybe not, because all it was going to take is one. So I think it's going to be the same thing with Duren. And I do think he has shown the passing flashes, and I think those flashes are real. He's shown a good amount of examples of it, whether it's in the short roll or him doing a little, Arvydas Sabonis no look over the shoulder to a cutter stuff. Like that stuff is fun. It's intriguing. And above all else, it shows a little bit of feel. He's not making the Draymond, like, come out of the short roll, hit the weak side corner yet. He's not doing that necessarily, but like, he doesn't have great spacing. He doesn't have great shooters to play with. Like, maybe in an NBA offense, spread, pick and roll, like maybe that's going to be there. Threat of the dive man, they're coming out high, trying to get the ball out of, somebody's hands, and the weak side corner sunk. And now he's so much more wide open than a shooter will ever be in a college game. Right. I can see it happening. Rucker, I know, I posted a clip, and this, you tweeted about it. Like, this is what keeps you up at night. The passing clip. Where are you? What do you think the long-term potential is as a passer?
I mean, if you're throwing a no look over your shoulder on the money, I'm excited. Like, I wasn't really like all sold, and then he did that, and I was just like, where the hell did that come from? Because it wasn't just like a fluke. It was like he knew he was going to throw it that way, and it was on the money. So the flashes are coming there. It's just the whole game, like I talked to you about earlier in this pod, Corey. Like, you keep seeing the flashes are coming more and more in like specific areas you want to see throughout the year. Now, I'm not saying like it's coming around more consistently, but you're seeing the different flashes. You're seeing the growth that he's experiencing this year. So everything he's on the right, track. He's trending up with his game, and it's going slower than we want. I just have seen some stuff with the short roll, like some of those passes to cutters. He's analyzing the floor. He's not panicking with the ball in his hands. I just really think that he's showing that he's maturing. He's showing these necessary steps to improve his game. And that's why I'm starting to come around on him again. And, you know, there's a freak in there, and it's just, can some team unlock all those tools and have them come together? That's what NBA teams are going to have to figure out when they evaluate him, especially up close and personal.
All right, so we made it to this part of the podcast. Albert, you wrote an amazing article for No Ceilings this week for Taking Out the Trash, where you compared Christian Coloco, Walker Kessler, and Mark Williams to the WWF/WWE big men of yesteryear in Kane, The Undertaker, and The Big Show. And I will say the picture that I used for the art for Walker Kessler literally looks like Kane without his mask, although that's not who you actually compared Walker Kessler to. It compared like the way they play to the pile driver and the choke slam and the KO punch, which is one of the worst finishing moves of all time. We don't need to go into that.
Yeah.
Big fan of him in WCW though, as the Giant. Really, really fun stuff. But the big question now becomes, and Albert, since you wrote the article,
Yeah.
I'll kick it to you. Would you rather draft Jalen Duren at pick 8 or any one of Mark Williams, Walker Kessler, or Christian Coloco at pick 23?
Okay. So,
because that's the question that NBA offices will wrestle with.
So Corey, right now I'm a little annoyed because you literally asked me the question that I wanted to ask you guys, because this is
we can do it all. We can answer it all.
Yeah, no, it's such a draft philosophy question that has been like, this has been chewing at me for like 3 weeks now, because every time we do like a big board or a mock draft, like you, Corey, have been consistent about your love and support for Jalen Duren, and I really respect that. But like in the back of my mind, I keep asking myself, like, okay, like I understand that there are things that Jalen Duren can do on the court that those 3 other guys that you mentioned, and maybe even like a Kamagate or whoever, even that Butler kid from Florida State, holy crap. Have you seen him recently? And he's starting to do some
John
stuff.
Butler.
I was like, what the hell is this? But anyway, like I can't shake this question in my mind. Like, as you mentioned, I really do believe there might be an NBA team that takes Duren like 7 or 8, right? Or even in the 12 range, right? But then for me, it's like, what is the huge difference between Duren and that other crop of guys? Because as I mentioned before, I believe so much of your evaluation with Duren is going to be theoretical, right? Because I don't like, by the end of the season, how much is Duren going to be actually be able to show us as a college prospect coming into the NBA? Meanwhile, we have guys like Mark Williams playing for a high-profile Duke team. He's starting to do more. Walker Kessler's had a nice string of games, the last 3-4 games, where he's putting up some big numbers. Coloco, I really enjoyed watching Coloco's tape. Like, and shouts to you, Rucker, because I think you were one of the first people I ever heard even talk about Coloco. And you start to see his hands, the way that he can move, the raw strength that he has. It's pretty ridiculous, right? Kamagate, Butler, like it's a long list of centers. For me, I want to ask you guys, because for me, I lean towards, why don't I take a guy in the late first round, early second, maybe even at the end of the second round? Like the Knicks took Jericho Sims late in the second round. I was like, great pick. I love that pick. And of course, I mean, Jericho Sims hasn't played much, but when I think about what he's able to do and what he might end up becoming, I feel like that's great value to grab Jericho Sims where the Knicks took him. So my question for you guys is, once again, for me, it feels so much of what Duren is and could be is theoretical. What would move you guys to taking him in the top 8 and not Kessler at 29 or Mark Williams at 22? You get what I'm saying? Because for me, I lean more towards that crop of in that range, because like Corey, I remember you did a video recently on your YouTube page, maybe not recent, like 2 months ago, 3 months ago, about like all the rage of big wings, big creators in the NBA. And then we talk about like bigs who pop because they're different, like a Giannis. He's a freak, right? Nikola Jokic, right? You could throw it to him in the nail. He can do all kinds of stuff, right? So does Duren have that type of ceiling where you feel confident in taking him in that range of 8 to 12? Or is it safer to just wait a little bit? Is the question that I really wanted to ask you guys, because it's kind of been messing with me a lot.
So for me, I think, or if you're taking Duren, or you're thinking about it and you're wrestling with this philosophical question, you see that smart guy Twitter, draft Twitter, we could talk philosophy. We'll make some dick jokes along the way, but we'll get serious too. We're the whole package, man.
We're smarter than we look.
We're the
I'm about to get deep in my feelings now.
we're
So
the-
let's get
we're
after
the-
this.
you're laying in bed with your girl at 3 a.m. talking about aliens. We'll do it all.
Hell
Life.
yeah.
How did it start? Where does the universe end? Where did it begin? So the philosophical question is like, is Walker Kessler's ceiling Jalen Duren's floor? Is the way I would approach it. Like, is Mark
Wow.
Williams ever going to be anything more than like a Daniel Gafford type of center? Like, where are we gonna, when we do his episode, are we gonna talk about his short roll passing in the future? Are we gonna talk about him stepping into a mid-range shot ever? I don't know. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about it, but like, how serious will we be about it? So it's like, all right, if all goes well, and obviously, like, Mark Williams, another guy I've been kind of holding the fort down on for no ceilings. His game could be simplistic and not really grow, and he could still be like a valuable player, but he is what he is. You kind of know what he is, right? If I'm drafting him, if I'm the Hornets, like I think he went to the Hornets in our latest mock draft at no ceilings, like, I know why I'm drafting him there, to protect the rim for maybe some perimeter defense that looks a little shoddy, and he's going to catch a bajillion lobs from Melo, and like, that's awesome. With Duren, you have those questions. Like, is he going to be a short roll passer? Is he going to be able to hit that little mid-range jumper? Is he going to show that little turnaround post fade that he had in high school? Like, those are questions for me philosophically, where if I'm drafting them higher, it's like, all right, low end, he's probably going to be DeAndre Jordan. Like, I think that could be his floor. And even if he doesn't really develop his game all that much, at least if you put him with a good point guard, like, he'll still find ways to contribute, even if he's not on the floor game 6 of the playoffs in round 2. I don't know if I could have the conversations with Mark Williams and Walker Kessler and Christian Koloko of like, can these guys do a whole lot more than what we're kind of seeing them doing? And when we're comparing them, like, Koloko's a little bit older, right? And he's finally showing those signs and getting the opportunity. Like, Duren's we're having these questions about him, and he just turned 18. Like, he can vote now, but he couldn't in the last election. Like, that's where we're at with him. So that's kind of my philosophical feeling on why you would be the guy in the war room going, we should take Duren over those guys early because of this.
Got it.
Yeah, to go off of what Corey's saying, I think Duren's going to be one of the biggest swings. Getting to the plate, you're swinging for the fences with him because, like Corey said, those other guys, the front office is going to convince themselves they know what they are. They know what they're going to bring to the table. But with Duren, you're banking on future stock. You're banking on him skyrocketing. And I have to get this out of my head before I forget to say it, because I think it's really important to what we're talking about with Duren. You go back the last couple of drafts. I brought this up earlier in the show, Albert. I just talked about, like, I could be lower on Duren. I have him 12th right now. I'm trying to keep moving him up. I will not be surprised if he goes top 6, because every NBA team, the front office fall in love with this type of big man. The Luka Doncic draft, he had one of the best resumes a prospect is ever going to have ever. And DeAndre
Probably
Ayton
ever again.
averaged
Probably ever again.
Ever.
Yeah.
And DeAndre Ayton averaged 21 and 10 a full season at Arizona. Phoenix takes him first because he's 7 foot, built, a potential franchise-altering center. James Wiseman plays 3 games, goes second overall. So I'm saying, like, teams are going to get in front of Duren and be like, holy crap, look at this kid. Like Corey's saying, like, they're going to say, throw the tape out. We have this raw 18-year-old. He might be 19. Or no, he just turned 18, right?
He just turned. He's going to be 18 and a half years old on draft night.
On draft
He's
night.
going to be 8.
Like,
he's going to be 18 when he plays his first NBA game.
exactly. So I'm saying that's what you're saying. You're swinging for the fences with Duren. You're saying this, we don't even know how good he could be. He has all these tools already. If he keeps showing us flashes and looks good in person, it's going to be one of those things where I would be swinging. If I got to 6 or 7 and Duren's on the board and I'm believing in, yes, I'm taking that swing. But it also, like Corey says, you have to measure his floor to potentially the ceiling of the other big prospects. And like, I'm higher on Koloko than a lot of guys. I still think he's older, but I still think the game's coming around to him. I'm a big Mark Williams believer. I think, like Corey, like I just think what Mark Williams is going to be. He's going to be, like Corey said, this rim protecting lob threat that can get after on the boards. Kessler's looked fantastic. I still have some questions about his versatility defensively, just when it comes to guards. But Duren's the swing. And I think NBA teams are going to, we all might move him down and slowly move him up. NBA teams might be like, to hell with that. This is a top 5 pick still. So
I think that also qualifies as our sell me this pen segment.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I accept tried it layers as tips. So
as you guys were talking, I was thinking, like, if the Blazers are there at 9 and Duren's on the board, I feel like that's an interesting swing. Nurkic is going to be a free agent. I get where you guys are coming from. It makes sense. I could see a team like Portland being like, let's take a swing on this guy at 9, see if he can. Yeah. Okay.
The problem with Portland there is that they're in the play-in game right now, and Dame and CJ will be healthy, and they're going to get them in the playoffs, and then the pick's going to go to the Chicago Bulls.
It's a real problem for one of us on this board. It's a real problem. But even if he went to Chicago, if he went to Portland, they get to dummy it down for him. Like the first year, they get to just make life simple. Like, hey, you're not going to take more shots than our starting point guard and potentially, I hope CJ's still there because I love CJ, but that's the type of place you put him there and you just say, this is not a 1-year thing. This is a 3-year process, and then we will reevaluate. And he's so damn young. That's like I said to Corey earlier. It's like drafting him straight out of high school. I mean, it's just it's ridiculous. Now you got me wanting to move him up already just because of the damn podcast.
Well, that's what we do here. That's the whole point of this. Every week we somehow talk up every single prospect
for real.
Then you have to make a board, and you're like, oh fuck. How did I say the words I said about this guy, and now I'm going to have him at 17? That doesn't make sense. But somebody has to be 17. You can't all be 12 and 7. Somebody's got to be the other numbers.
Did you guys do comps yet?
No. So
okay.
All right, Albert, do you have? Come on, this is a segment on our show. If you're
your first time, Rucker?
Yeah, I haven't been on since.
You new here?
I haven't been on since 1986. So
we didn't do that. Was a weird episode. We didn't even do the normal format. All right, Albert, if you're buying stock in Duren, who may you have bought stock in previously?
Okay, so usually I go with 90s guys, but I don't think we had a lot of freaks like him in the 90s. I mean, in the 90s we had a lot of our slender centers. Duren's not really a slender guy. This guy's sick. Who I thought of is this player in college. They thought he was going to be something really interesting. I think he had some weight issues. He wore a lot of t-shirts under his jerseys, but he was still ripped. and people were really excited about him. I don't remember where he went in the draft. He might have went 10th in the draft. I don't remember actually. My guy's Andre Drummond. It's like who people thought Andre Drummond was going to be. Maybe Duren becomes that was where my mind went. Yeah. Is that weird? That's what I thought.
Icon career. I think he went ninth. I think he went ninth.
Okay.
That's
who I was thinking.
No, I don't think it's completely out there because I think like even Drummond now is probably a better passer than people think he is.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the rebounding, he's absurd as a rebounder and whatnot. Never really truly expanded his game, but like did get better as a free throw shooter as his career went on. I think the thing that held Drummond back or why people, would be down on, I don't think he ever figured out the processing stuff defensively to like really be that anchor that you want. And I do think that is a potential downside for Duren, right? But even Andre Drummond, like this is a guy who, I mean, he was a borderline all-star type player, right? Like, did he?
Right.
He never made the all-star game, did he? Did he have one of those ridiculous years where he was like a fill-in?
I don't know.
But he's a guy that was
weird.
He was definitely on the cusp at one point.
Wow,
when he was
two-time all-star, believe it or not.
Two-time all-star, yeah. Right. So you're looking at a guy like downside. If your downside is Andre Drummond, that's not bad because even if he's not like the winning player, right? Like, these guys still have trade value. Like an all-star type player is a guy that people are going to want to trade for to get value if you cash in at the right moment, on your stock. So I think that, that's a fun one. Rucker, do you have one? Because it seems like you had to go top of your head. You were panicking.
I have like two guys, but I need to like subtract a skill set that they have. Is that legal?
Do it.
I want to say like Robert.
It's not a 1-to-1.
I have like Robert Williams without the passing. That's my vibe. A bigger Robert Williams without the passing. I can't. I don't know. I can't.
I love Robert Williams. That dude is so good.
It's the Time Lord. It's like.
Did we think he was going to be this kind of passer?
I didn't.
What?
I
don't think we did, right? He didn't have that in his bag at A&M.
If he was going to be this kind of passer, he would have went top 10.
Well, he had the medical problem.
Yeah.
That's why he slipped. And so, like, I think, like, a bigger Robert Williams, although I think Robert Williams is just fantastic. He also named his kid. He just had a kid. Shout out Time Lord. And he named his kid Hendrix. So, obviously, he's a big Jimi Hendrix guy. So, shout out Time Lord.
Maybe he's a fan of Hendrix hockey from the Mighty Ducks.
There it is. That's what it is.
It's a win-win, Corey.
Team USA, baby.
No, but I think like that. I don't know. It's weird. It's really weird. Miles Turner? Nah, I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mentioned Miles Turner before. Yeah.
I went with Albert is the guy who usually goes with some of the older guys, and this guy's not this isn't a '90s guy, but almost. I'm going to go with Jermaine O'Neal.
That's a good one. Oh my gosh, he's got the same shot too.
Yeah.
He's got that bullet. Fuck, that's a good one.
They're both kind of thick, babies when they came in the league.
Yeah, Jermaine was out of high school, right?
Yep. And I don't know if, obviously, like we know it took the trade to free up playing time to finally get Jermaine O'Neal on the floor and let him, ball out, play to his potential. I don't know. Maybe that's a scenario you could live with. I think Duren's going to be one of those guys that he might not come out of the gate and set the world on fire. Mm-hmm. We're already this year. We're like, the beginning of the season, we're like, all right, so we're taking Franz above Cade in a redraft. Like that's people, and that's where they were at. I think Duren's one of those guys where like after year one, almost where we're at with Wiseman, people are out. People have dumped all of the stock. His price is tanked. And maybe if he deals with injury stuff, like that's a real concern, right? If
I bought it all, Corey.
That can't stay healthy. Well, we both.
We're going to be rich because I bought it all. I've been buying it all. All of it. Everyone listening, all of it. I have it all.
But yeah, it's just like he's one of these guys where like, all right, maybe he doesn't. And again, I mean, I think we're both on the same side where it's like Wiseman was pretty good last year, like compared to where people are like talk about him. Like he was pretty good. He showed some real fun stuff. But I think Duren could be one of these guys where you're like, all right, maybe he's not showing out the way some of these other guys that are taken behind him are. But we're not drafting for year 1. We're drafting for year 7, year 6, right? And he could be one of those guys. Whether it's on the first team or the second team, I don't know. But all I know is I want him to go to a situation where he can develop his game and mold it, because I think he has special potential if he lands in the right context. If he doesn't, I could totally see him being a guy that is just one of the we always want more, but it's certainly there, and I think the floor is high enough that you take the chance fairly early.
Yeah, I would be surprised if he went in the top 10 and played serious minutes his rookie year. I would think that a smart team would be like, we're not rushing him into the starting lineup just because he's a top 10 pick. We are letting him build some confidence. I would be very shocked if he all of a sudden has the Evan Mobley, like, holy crap, look how good this guy is. We can't keep him off the floor. I think he's going to be more realistic of like, let's put him with a veteran center who can show him the ropes, and we'll play him sparingly and keep building his confidence. And then maybe the second half of the year, you let him run wild and start building some confidence. So I'm right there with you.
You know who that sounds like?
James Wiseman?
Sounds like Jakob Poeltl. Sounds like Jakob.
Yeah.
Sounds like the San Antonio Spurs currently at the 7th spot, who just took
They
Josh
love
Primo.
Jakob Poeltl.
Seems like the Spurs might be. See, they had some pretty good big men on their team, did they not? I don't know.
Yeah,
we're old guys now. Yeah, maybe Pop knows a thing or two. Yeah, I don't know. Throw him with Chip England. Maybe he's chucking threes.
Damn.
Who knows?
Damn.
Rucker, as our guest, why don't you tell everyone on the internet where they can find you?
I am at No Ceilings. Obviously, I'm going to plug that first. NoCeilings.substack.com with these two gentlemen. It's been an absolute bat out of hell freight train, and it's been awesome. And I'm also at Backcourt Violation on social media. Pretty much everywhere. You can hide, but you can run, but you can't hide. So thank you guys for having me on, and I'm pumped to keep grinding on No Ceilings in the draft season.
Yes, sir. Albert, where you at?
Where can you find me? You can find me. Hey, I'm also a part of this No Ceilings collective thing, but my handle is Alberto Gim. You can also find me at GTG NBA. Do want to say having Rucker on is always fun. Is always fun. If you guys didn't know, just to give you guys a little what's that segment behind the scenes, it's the baseball
music?
one. No, what's the baseball one? I forgot there's a baseball one. Whatever, who cares? Corey and Rucker, they're really like our kind of fearless leaders at No Ceilings, and they do a great job of dealing with all of our crazy personalities. If you guys could ever see or get on our Zoom calls, and if you could hear some of the wild things that our guys say, it's unbelievable. But Corey and Rucker do a great job of balancing us all out. So I just want to thank you once again, Rucker, for joining us today and kind of subbing in for the first 70% of the pod because I was stuck in traffic. But yeah, man, awesome having you guys on. And yeah, where can we find you, Mr. Tulaba?
Hey, you can find me at Corey Tulaba on the Twitters, at the NoCeilingSubstack.com, which is free. If you subscribe, you get it directly to your inbox every single morning. You guys are going to want to be like all the cool kids. And when we talk about the cool kids, let's throw it out there, man. No, you want to be like the NBA executives that are subscribed. You want to be like the NBA agents that are subscribed. You want to be like all of our friends in the draft community who have subscribed. All right. Be a part of the community. Comment. You can also find my YouTube channel, NBA Draft Dude. Subscribe there. Got a film sesh coming on Paolo Banchero, hopefully early next week.
Ooh.
and
Oh
which I'm
my.
excited for another very controversial player. And every week you could find my voice, Albert's voice, and some guests on the Draftdaq NBA Draft Podcast, which you're listening to right now. And if you haven't yet, you can now leave a rating on Spotify.
Oh
Give us a
my.
little rating on Spotify if you haven't already. Give us a little rating on Apple Podcasts. That stuff, it helps out. I'm not going to hold you to a 5-star rating. Sometimes we go off the rails. We talked about a lot of things today. You be honest. You give us what you think we deserve. All right? I'm not on my knees begging for ratings, I want you to be honest with yourself. So, if you think that's a 4, all right, I get it. We got big personalities sometimes, man. But I would appreciate a 5. So, now we're rambling. Thank you for everybody for tuning in this long. Thank you everybody who watched on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to No Ceilings YouTube too. There's so many things to plug. That's it for us. We will be back next week. As always, more draft stuff to discuss. It never sleeps. It's all year round now because No Ceilings is doing it all year round. We out. Peace.